This podcast details true crime cases. It contains adult themes and may contain descriptions of violence. This episode contains explicit language. It is not intended for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Once Upon a Crime. We're wrapping up Season 8 with a retrospective of the best of OUAC episodes. I'm sharing select stories from our archive of over 300 episodes, which you may have missed if you began listening in Season 5, 3, or even Season 1. I'll share 2 best of episodes weekly, one on Monday and one on Friday. I'll briefly introduce why we've chosen each episode as one of our best, and then share a preview clip of what you'll hear. Links to the full episodes will be in the show notes. I released a series called A Woman Scorned in Season 1. It detailed the crimes of women who felt wronged by their romantic partners and took matters into their own hands, with deadly results. In this best of episode, I'll tell you the story of Betty Broderick. Betty was married to a handsome and successful attorney and lived the life she'd always dreamed of. But she never felt secure in the love of her husband, Dan Broderick. Arguments and bickering escalated into accusations of infidelity, threats of divorce, and even physical fights. Betty's behavior became more erratic once she learned her husband was in a relationship with his much younger secretary. As their divorce proceeded, Betty spun out of control, and her rage towards Dan Broderick finally came to a tragic end in 1989. This clip is from Season 1, Episode 42, A Woman Scorned, Betty Broderick. Are you a super fan of Once Upon a Crime? Show your love, support the show, and get tons of perks by joining our Patreon. Patreon members get ad-free episodes and can hear them before anyone else. You also get bonus episodes and a special gift sent in the mail when you become a member. Memberships start at just $2 per month. You can save even more when you choose the option to pay annually. Go to patreon.com/onceuponacrime to get more info and become a member. You can also find the link on our website, truecrimepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening and supporting the show. Hey guys, this is Esther, host of Once Upon a Crime. I've got an exciting opportunity that I'm so psyched to share with you. How would you like to travel the world with me? My second love after true crime is seeing the world. Now, I've been given the opportunity to host trips to destinations around the world and bring you, my listeners and friends of the show, along with me. But I need your help. I need your input to plan these trips. Where would you like to go? What kind of activities would you like to enjoy? Would you like to visit a city like New York, London, or Mexico City and check out the local entertainment, culture, and nightlife? Or would you prefer a tropical getaway like Bali or the Caribbean for laid-back sightseeing and beach days? Or anything in between? How about crossing off that trip to Turkey or Indonesia or Italy off your bucket list? Click on the link in the show notes to complete a short 2-minute survey and tell me what kind of travel you're most interested in. And I'll keep you informed about upcoming trips as soon as they're confirmed. We'll plan trips around your interests and budget, and we'll travel together as a small group. There's safety in numbers too, so single men and women are encouraged. Or bring your significant other or best friends along. Either way, it will be a blast. Click on the survey link right away. The sooner we get your responses, the sooner we'll be on the road together to new adventures. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to travel with you. Betty was raised to be a wife and mother, and she had a specific man in mind for a mate. He should be handsome, of course. He should also be a college man who aspired to become a professional, like a doctor, lawyer, or businessman. Dan, like Betty, was raised to value home and family above all, but he also aspired towards the finer things in life and was willing to work hard to have a successful career, to provide his family with all the things money could buy. Now, having met Betty, he could see the future in front of him, to be a successful doctor, to be married to a beautiful wife, and eventually have children and a beautiful home as well. She could envision their life as well, living in a beautiful home, being a doctor's wife, and hobnobbing in upper-class society circles. These were all the things her parents had dreamed of for her. She had charm and grace and a sense of style. Dan was smart, funny, and charismatic. Everyone saw them as a golden couple, perfectly matched. Their first child, Kimberly, was born in 1970. 1 year later, their second daughter, Lee, was born. When Dan decided after he'd finished his medical degree that he wanted to attend law school instead of becoming a doctor, Betty agreed. While she knew it would take more sacrifice and they would continue to live on a tight budget, she believed Dan when he said, with both a medical and a law degree, he could specialize in medical malpractice law and be in high demand at top law firms. Dan entered Harvard Law School while Betty continued to work to support the family, sometimes even selling Tupperware door to door. Dan finally graduated with his law degree in 1974. Dan took a job at the prestigious law firm Gray, Carey, Ames & Fry. While Dan worked on building a successful legal career, he would often put in 15-hour days. There was a definite strain in the marriage, with Betty left alone long hours with the children, while Dan worked at the office. Even when he was home, he was preoccupied with work that needed to be completed before court. She was lonely in the marriage and wanted more of his time. She missed the way he used to dote on her when they were dating and engaged. Dan was becoming more successful and popular in his field, and was away from the home more and more. Increasingly, she felt her husband was leaving her behind and didn't view her as important or special anymore. Betty was once again, and for the last time, pregnant. She gave birth to their fourth child and second son, Rhett, in 1979. By now, Betty had been complaining and nagging her husband about his lack of time spent with her and the family for years. Their fights began to escalate, and the children would later vividly recall these tense times. By the time he would arrive, she would be furious. Kim remembers many, many instances of her mother and father screaming at each other, and that her mother would often throw things at him. She would pick up and hurl whatever was in reach, including plates, cups, and once an almost full bottle of ketchup that shattered just over Dan's head. Betty's behavior became increasingly immature as her frustration grew. The children were subjected to her angry tirades. She was increasingly insecure about her looks and her weight and worried that Dan would no longer find her attractive. Betty began criticizing and taunting Dan at every opportunity that he was going through a midlife crisis. Betty continued to yell, complain, and berate her husband. She often threatened divorce, sometimes putting Dan's clothes in a suitcase and dropping it on the porch for him to find. Dan's response became to ignore his wife's histrionics. After years of constant criticism and nagging by Betty, he just stopped fighting with her. He would ignore her, stay silent, and pretend like nothing had happened. That she was now getting no response from her husband made Betty even more angry. Have you noticed that your grocery prices have increased significantly lately? If you're shopping for your family and want quality products, it can really make a dent in your food budget. That's why I shop Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an online destination that makes healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. You can shop for thousands of best-selling organic foods and natural products at member-only prices. And believe me, as a longtime member of Thrive Market, I can vouch for the quality, and their prices just can't be beat. Shopping online with Thrive Market is a breeze. You can filter the products you're shopping for by dietary or lifestyle preferences. For my diet and lifestyle, I put in search terms like keto, sugar-free, low-carb, and organic. But there are over 90 values to choose from, including fair trade certified, gluten-free, and non-GMO. Thrive Market isn't just for grocery items, although they do have everything you need, from healthy kid-friendly snacks to cooking and baking staples, pantry items, meats, and seafood. But that's not all. You can also find a wide range of high-quality personal care items, baby products, pet products, home cleaning products, and cosmetics. It's like a one-stop shop for all your healthy and organic needs. I have found the best prices on some of my favorite quality food brands, such as Kind, Simple Mills, Siete, Orgain, and The Honest Kitchen. And I have a special offer for my listeners. New members who join using our affiliate link, thrivemarket.com/once, get 30% off their first order, plus a free gift up to $60. As a member, you get special promotions all the time, including free gifts with orders. From May 13th to 17th, Thrive Market members get 25% off bars and snacks for all new and existing members. At Thrive Market, you can get healthy snacks your kids will actually love at much lower prices than other retailers. I'm sure you've seen some of these products at your local Whole Paycheck and then put them right back on the shelf when you saw the sticker price. But at Thrive Market, you can enjoy the same quality at a fraction of the cost, making healthy living more affordable and accessible. Some of my little's favorites are Lesser Evil Little Puffs, Scout Organic Kids Snack Bars, Go-Go Squeeze Yogurts, Annie's Organic Snack Bars, and Bobo's Oat Bars. And you can easily filter products to exclude food allergens and taste preferences too. Go to thrivemarket.com/once to get 30% off your first order when you become a member, plus a free gift of up to $60 and start saving on your food bill every month. That's thrivemarket.com/once. And thanks so much for supporting the show. In 1982, the family went on a week-long vacation to a dude ranch in Montana. Betty and the kids arrived first and had a great time horseback riding and swimming. Dan arrived a bit later, and at first, they enjoyed their vacation as a family. Soon, however, Dan and Betty had a big fight, and Dan decided to go back to San Diego on his own. Betty tried to call him repeatedly, but he did not answer her calls. Betty drove the kids home alone soon after, and she became angrier the closer they approached their home. When they arrived, she lit into Dan about being an irresponsible parent, a terrible husband, and a selfish human being, a laundry list of his faults that he'd been hearing for years. But this time, something snapped. Without a word, Dan packed a bag and left. Betty was stunned, as were the children. Remembering this time, Kim would write, "From my viewpoint, Dad without Mom equaled peace and normalcy, while Mom without Dad had disaster written all over it." A new stress came into play in the life of the Brodericks in 1983. After all the years of Betty accusing Dan of going through a midlife crisis, she was now convinced he was also having an affair. Perhaps because of what ultimately happened, for years no one would comment much on Dan's behavior during this time. Later, a few details would emerge. While some at the time would say that Dan didn't begin a relationship until after he and Betty separated for good, others would admit they knew an affair had begun sometime before. Not much would be said about Linda's part in the breakup of Dan Broderick's marriage. While it's certainly true that the marriage had been on the rocks long before Linda Kulkenna made her appearance in Dan Broderick's life, she would certainly turn out to be a factor in his exit from the marriage. Betty discussed Dan's infidelity with her children, filling them in on all the gossip and calling his assistant ever more colorful names. All of this, of course, was inappropriate to share with her children. Betty never stopped her tirades against their father and began to grow angrier at each passing day. Dan filed for legal separation and then finally admitted to having a relationship with Linda Kulkenna. Betty's anger turned to hate. Dan finally filed for divorce on September 23, 1985. When Betty found out that Dan had filed for divorce and changed the locks after 16 years of marriage, she lost all control. She arrived at his house and threw a patio umbrella through a glass in the back door, unlocking it and letting herself in. She went on a rampage and tore apart every room in the house, throwing furniture, ripping up pictures, shredding curtains, and even spray painting the walls. She tried to drag out the divorce proceedings in many ways. The day of the final court hearing, Betty had no lawyer representing her, and she decided if she didn't show up, they would have to postpone the final divorce judgment. She was wrong. The judge finalized the Brodericks' divorce on July 16, 1986, without Betty present. Betty, even 3 years after their separation, and almost as long since their divorce, still held hatred for Dan and now Linda. She would often tell the children that she was going to kill him. They heard it so often, they didn't even react to it anymore. She sometimes would elaborate, saying that she was going to shoot him in the head. In early 1989, Betty bought a gun. I hope you enjoyed that clip from episode 42 of Once Upon a Crime, A Woman Scorned, Betty Broderick. The show notes include a link to the entire episode if you want to hear it. I covered 2 other cases in A Woman Scorned. Jodi Arias and Clara Harris. Harris's case is also known as Murder by Mercedes. I've included links to those episodes in the show notes as well. Also in the show notes are links to become a Thrive Market member and save money on healthier swaps for your family's groceries, home and pet care products, personal care, and more. There's also a link to our Trova Trip travel survey and our Patreon page. I appreciate your support of the show, whether you visit our sponsor links, join our Patreon, or just listen. Thank you so much. Once Upon a Crime is written and produced by me, Esther Sanchez-Ludlow. My executive producer is Lorena Garcia. Until next time, be good to one another.